Okay, just wanted to take a look at the first round of the playoffs. Yesterday we had our final week to qualify. Unfortunately, the rain hurt some teams and weren't able to get their good scores in. But we had enough. We had enough good scores. We had one, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine teams got 40 or more points. So that's pretty good. Let's um, Let's take a look at the playoffs. So in the A playoffs, we have, and this is on the website. These are the matchups. We have former champion Team Aerosmith playing Team Beasley. Team Beasley leading all year. They didn't have a full team up, but they managed to hang on to top spot. So the number one seed is Team Beasley versus Team 16 Aerosmith. The big matchup, and our handicapper will be talking about that after this video, is Team Jones versus Team Pat Fitzgerald. They're the 8 and 9 teams, so that'll be interesting. Team Shanat, who's loaded with superstars. Unfortunately, a lot of them couldn't play yesterday. They got caught up in the rain, and but the only way you can stop Rod Mustard these days is through a tornado warning, which is what we had around 6:30 yesterday. Team Bruce McDonald always seemed to be there. They came through big yesterday. They're playing Team Card, which was a finalist a few years ago. They're always in the top echelon, and if things go right for them, they could be our winner this year. Team Thompson versus Team Al Hattab. I talked with Mel Thompson. He's going to Ireland, unfortunately, so they're going to be without one player, and hopefully they'll be able to be competitive. And you got Team Al Hattab, who's always there. Team Kuzma versus Team Chapu, veteran teams there. Team Chapu having a very veteran team. Team Pereira versus Team Radia, and Team Pereira being the number 2 seed. And the number 7 seed, and the number 2 seed, Team Stanley versus Team Deschamps. So that's your first round of the A playoffs. One of these teams is going to get $100 off their men's league fees next year. In the B playoffs, we have the number 1 seeded team was Team Ewart. Some veteran teams going at it here. Team Cutler versus Team Lauren Fitzgerald. 2 veteran teams going at it here. Team Chillington versus Team Cada. Jardine versus Hall in the next matchup. St. Louis versus Fleck. Team Medina versus Team Mulligan. Team Cat versus Team Sapella, and Team Lockyer versus Team Spence. So that's your second round matchups here. In the third round, again, another loaded team, Team Coyle. Unfortunately, they couldn't get all their players out, but they did score well. They scored over 40 points last night, but not enough to get them into the B area versus Team Castle. Last year's champions, Team Beggs, playing Team Elliott Riddell. Team Panaton versus Team Godden. Team Trenholm always has a good run. They're in the C this year versus Team Minkus. Team Johnstone, who's missing their captain right now, he's on the mend, and versus Team LaChance. And although Team Roger is playing, he is not on a team, but this team name is still associated with that team. Team 10, Team Dickey versus Team Nichols. Team Abu versus Team Watson, and Team Chambers versus Team Consenso. So those are your playoff matchups. Our handicapper will be on handicapping the 8-9 matchups. So Team Jones versus Team Fitzgerald, Team Cutler versus Team Lauren Fitzgerald, and Team Beggs versus Team Elliott Riddell. So that's it for my segment, and we'll get to the handicapper segment now. Okay. I'm here with Tyler Fitzgerald, who's going to be handicapping the team playoffs this year, and I've used the 8-9 matchups in each of the 3 divisions to do the first 3 picks. And I sent Tyler, and let's just take a look at, first of all, before we do that, let's just take a look at the 8-9 matchups here. In the A final, it's going to be Team Jones versus Team Pat Fitzgerald. And in the B final, it's Team Cutler versus the Team Lauren Fitzgerald. And in the C final, Team Beggs versus the Team Elliott Riddell. And so let's just take a look who's on those teams. And Tyler, you can take us through. Let's go through Team A. It's Team Jones is Jim Clark, Yvonne Delaire, Ray Jones, Jim Kelly, Mitch Dion versus Team Pat Fitzgerald, Andrew Buzza, Pat Fitzgerald, Jeff Gifford, Mark Nickel, and Terry Van Kessel. What do you got?
Well, John, no, thanks. And this is probably looking at these players here. Well, I mean, I'm looking at some pretty rock hard, steady golfers in both teams. The Teams Jones, I think, has a bit of an edge over Team Fitzgerald. I see Jim Clark and Yvonne Delaire, Ray Jones. They're here pretty well every day working on their game and playing golf. So, Jim Kelly, Mitch Zion. They're fantastic golfers too, but I see this a little bit more on the side of experience with Clark, Delaire, and Jones. Now on Pat Fitzgerald's side, this is where we have a little bit more of a variance. So we have Andrew Buzza, Pat Fitzgerald, Jeff Gifford. They're out here quite a bit too, but I see them either getting hot or cold a little bit more often than maybe the steady team of Team Jones.
Okay, so we've got Team Jones as the favorite in this one. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
B division, we've got Team Cutler, very veteran team, one of the oldest teams. You could tell if they're a veteran team by the team number, and Team Cutler is team number 4, so they've been around a while. Versus Team Warren Fitzgerald, another veteran team. You've got Steve Cutler, Chris Kelly, Rick Morgan, Rod Sakiyama, Stu Whiteman versus Tony Adams, JP Coe, Lauren Fitzgerald, Ron Fritch, and David McRae. What do you got?
Well, here, you know what, John, this is I think I'd be crucified if I didn't go with Team Fitzgerald on this one. Certainly a little bit of family background knowledge, Lauren being my grandfather and all. He's certainly got the experience being a very well-established golfer, but I'm also looking at the depth of his team and Tony Adams, Ron Fritch, even JP Couette and David McRae. I'm going to be putting a little bit more, I got my feels on them. Now, not to be outdone, I mean, Steve Cutler, former president, Chris Kelly, he's a pretty solid guy too. Rick Morgan, Rod and Stu. I mean, we certainly have an abundance of experience on both teams, but when I look at match play format, when I look at who's really good under the gun, I'm going to be leaning a little bit more towards Team Fitzgerald on this one.
I think we can forgive you for picking Team Fitzgerald. It is your grandfather. You got to go home and celebrate Thanksgiving with the guy, and so I get it. I get it. Those family meetings would be a little difficult if you didn't pick them. But they are a good team, and they're very experienced. And any one of those guys, all 10, could get hot. Like Stu Whiteman's been. I played with him a few weeks ago. He was playing lights out. I mean, he was just incredible. 82 years old, and the guy hits the ball a ton, and he was scoring so well. So any one of these guys can do it. Rod Sakiyama, a very steady player. So yeah, I can see your dilemma. Mm-hmm. C division, Team Beggs, last year's champion. Hey, they've fallen a long way off. Alex Beggs, Dan McAvoy, Glenn Goodkey, he was our last year's champion. He's way back. Brad McDonald and Evan Morrison versus Team Elliott Riddell. Now, Elliott, a great player, has not been able to show up a lot this year, but his team has really held him up well. Steve Boxman, Kyle Godwin, Glenn Noonan, Elliott, and Jim Tonem. Hey, what do you got here? This is to me, I don't know. I don't know.
This, I think, John, this can go either way so easily. I think this is where participation is going to be key. We got to get these players showing up and coming out and playing and supporting their team. So I'm going to bank this on track record. Who's been coming out weekly to these to the men's league. And just looking at the names here, I'm going to have to go, it's a split decision, but I'm going with Team Beggs on this one. I do see them out just a little bit more than Team Rydell. So I'm going to be placing my bets on Team Banks.
I think I would agree with you on that one. Team Banks, first of all, they are last year's champions. They know how to win, and they do show up. And unfortunately, the Riddell team, very good team. Kyle Godwin, a good player. Glenn Noonan, good player. They're all good players. Elliott is an outstanding player. His job has kept them from coming out as often as he'd like, and so yeah, I think that's a very wise choice. Anyway, we'll see how it turns out. Thank you very much, and we'll hopefully next week we'll have results of your predictions and 3 more predictions for you next week. Thank you very much, Tyler.
Great, thanks, John. Thanks for having me.
All right.